Welcome to the Continuous Transformation Podcast, where spirit and science meet and creatively merge to give birth to the future. Disclaimer: high risk of life-transforming perspectives.
This is the best time to begin your continuous transformation process.
Your host is Advaitananda, a visionary, influencer, and scientist with a quantum physics background and more than 30 years' experience of yoga, tantra, and meditation practice and teaching. Episode 6, Behind the Iron Curtain and the Stolen Revolutions, Part 2, Our Ignored History, with interviewer Sahajananda J. Porslund. Join this talk, where Sahajananda J. Porslund comes back to continue his talk with Advaitananda on a subject that seems to become more and more important by the hour. Ava shares his first-hand insights from stolen revolutions and mass manipulation, which emerge as extremely useful as we see history repeating itself again today.
This is an obsession that all totalitarian regimes are having to rename, because they, in this way, try to deceive at the conceptual level, which is a very important level, to deceive people. And they have an obsession with renaming. You know, vocabulary is evolving naturally. You don't need to enforce vocabulary. People who try to enforce vocabulary always belong to these totalitarian regimes. Always. You can spot them when they start to change the vocabulary. No, that word is not good. You cannot say Mr. You have to say comrade. You cannot say this gender. You have to say inclusive terms, blah, blah. You cannot say... When you hear that, you're about to meet one of the exponents, one of the agents of the totalitarian regime, which either came into power or is about. This is the symptom of totalitarianism coming into power, redefining terms, redefining social relations, putting other proportions than the natural proportions in all events, and then they create tension by what? Staged events. 1989 stage event, in which I have witnessed clearly on the streets even, and seen firsthand the effects, but also other staged events. Welcome everyone, I'm Advaitananda, and today I want us to continue a journey that seems to become more and more relevant by the hour today. Together with a dear friend, I started to share a view behind what was known as the Iron Curtain. And also we intended to look into what we can call today fake revolutions. The reason for doing this is, one, the deep crisis that we're facing today in the world, and the fact that this crises that we're facing today have striking similarities with different moments in our recent or even distant history. And because of this, these resemblances can mean a lot for everyone who seeks to understand what is going on today. We know intuitively that the lessons that we have not learned, we tend to repeat. That's why we say history tends to repeat itself, and we can add to that when the lessons are not learned. Therefore, when I saw the subject suggested by my guest today, I felt I should take it on because it had a chance to reveal what I personally witnessed in some important moments in the recent history. And therefore, by sharing this and by also combine it with the life experiences that I had before and throughout my journey in the spiritual realm, we can also draw some very interesting conclusions, as you will see, and as we already saw in the first part. Today we see all the classic signs of the emergence of a totalitarian regime worldwide. The first step to prevent this process, as I also mentioned in the first part of this podcast, is to learn the lessons, to reveal and then to learn the lessons of the past. Often what happens today is strikingly similar to what happened in the past. I can see that myself very often, and sometimes I cannot believe what I hear and see in the media today, because I grew up with these lies, I grew up with these fake news, I grew up with this kind of wording in order to cover reality. So for this reason, it is important, in my opinion, for everyone who have been witnessing such events in the past to speak out and to help others to wake up, because what we see today is totalitarian regime in sheep clothes, so to speak, is the wolf in sheep clothes that is approaching silently, so it doesn't scare the rest of the sheep. And for sure, if this doesn't stop, this regime will make its way to absolute power, because they always do that, despite the fact that they always talk religiously about unity, about the good of the people, about progress, and also about science. It's very interesting. I've witnessed that when a totalitarian regime was telling us obsessively, listen to science. We need to realize that most of what we see today in the human society is the result of social engineering, and is not the result of some freak natural phenomena to which some people happen to have a plan that fit their agenda also. Therefore, I invited again together here my guest Sahajananda Porslund, or short Sahaj. Welcome back, Sahaj.
Thank you.
Well, Sahaj is a freelance investigative journalist, and he's the one who started Copenhagen Conscious Talks. I think you have me once or twice there also, Sahaj.
Definitely. We had some great talks.
It's a great project, that one. We also know that you're a worker for community and a tireless seeker for the truth beyond the smoke screens from the mainstream media. You are always surrounded by all kind of border theories. You are seeking beyond the appearances all the time. And of course, this is probably also because you are a yoga practitioner, a tantra practitioner for many years, and also you are an inspiring yoga and tantra teacher in Nata Yoga Center in Copenhagen. And of course, in our previous podcast, you came with this idea to talk about a period of time that for me represents the first part of my life, and to use me as a lucid observer, or kind of a witness of the time that seemed to repeat itself today. And in the first part, we've lifted a bit this so-called Iron Curtain, and we aim to bust some of this propaganda-made myths about a totalitarian regime. Before we start our journey today, I also want to mention that this talk is not meant to criticize a certain regime, in that case the communism, because the aim is much deeper. We aim to reveal the mechanisms, as much as possible, of course, the mechanisms of a totalitarian regime, because that is what we see today emerging. So, Sahaj, let's continue this journey.
Yeah, so those who didn't watch maybe yet the first part, for me that was very enlightening about exactly your time during communism, your experiences during communism, and especially you explained how the people kind of demanded a totalitarian regime. And that's maybe something we can talk a bit more about how that works, because as you say, it seems that there is a social engineering happening, but that it's using the inner mechanisms, psychological mechanisms of the human being. And I think that would be great to, let's say, look upon how your experiences back then is also reflecting and mirrored in all what's happening today in the world. And maybe you can start explain a bit more about what you mean by fake revolution in 89, because I saw from Denmark on the TV screen, I remember still, we saw the whole story, the uprising in Romania, the fall of Ceausescu, the online assassination, or, well...
No, execution.
Execution of Ceausescu was shown on Danish television.
On 25th of December, on Christmas Day.
And everybody believed that that's how the whole thing played out, and it was a revolution. So what happened in reality, and why was it a fake revolution?
Well, you see, there's a lot of controversy even now in Romania about this event that happened in 1989, which we like to call it revolution, but it's just a frivolous name, because in reality it was very much an engineered event in order to push forward the new agenda of the world, the new agenda of the powers of the world. Communism expired, and they needed a different direction. And what I've seen and what I have witnessed was the fact that the entire public opinion was skillfully manipulated to believe that now it is a natural, a spontaneous uprising, that we are going out in the streets because we had enough. And it's true, we did have enough in a certain way. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But the way it was engineered was in order to maximize the television impact of it. It was actually a revolution on TV. And it was very cynically engineered by certain people, among them a famous Romanian director, one of the most famous directors in the world for historic movies and war movies, and he was the perfect candidate for that. His name is Sergiu Nicolaescu. He was the one who had assigned some military units that he played with, real war games, in order to create this impression of a revolution and counter-revolution. And terrorists, by the way, we had terrorists on the streets of Bucharest in 1989, all over the place, yet nobody ever saw one, nobody ever caught one or tried one. And so there were a lot of things in those days which were, let's say, not adding up. What is also shocking is that people wanted so much to believe that story that the majority still want to believe that story, even though during the last 3 decades, lots of strange things came out, proving that it was not, you cannot even say it was a little bit helped, the revolution. It was staged entirely, and people were used. Yeah. In the last year of the communist regime in Romania, during 1989, the circles of power around Ceausescu, they already knew what will happen. And imagine, they say it's a totalitarian regime, and actually the circles of power were already planning it so much that I, in June 1989, had a friend of mine. It's true, his father worked for the secret police. But come on, you don't speak with your family, especially in those times. You don't go home and brag about the future of the country and things like that, especially to such an event. So in June 1989, this friend of mine comes to me and tells me by Christmas, we eat American turkeys. That was a kind of a joke in Romania to say we got rid of communism. And then he even told me the name of the next president of Romania, Ion Iliescu. Now, you have to realize that during the December 1989 uprising, this guy, Ion Iliescu, apparently was picked up from the street by the mob. And then he landed in the television studios. The story says he just accidentally happened to be there. He helped. He gave a helping hand. He was a kind of second rank in Communist Party, actually. So he was not just a nobody. But nobody seemed to remember that in those days. He was just a fresh figure, whitewashed by the blood of the revolution on the streets. And then he came and he said, we should do... He was speaking about national unity. We need to unite our wounded nation. Speaking of what we hear today, we need to bring back everybody under the same roof. And he proposed some new government, some new things, and it's famous. You can even find it online. He proposed a list of people who they say these are honest people, unbiased people of by the past regime. And in the end, he said, and with your permission, me. It's a famous statement when he introduced himself, with your permission, me. And from with your permission, me, he became the president. He made all the way up through eliminating opposition. Many people started to figure out in the next weeks after the shooting stopped on the streets, the terrorist problem was eliminated, even though no terrorists were killed, no terrorists were caught. But interestingly, the terrorist problem stopped the day the new government took seat.
So he was chosen. He was chosen by, let's say, the.
He was chosen before, obviously, because, as I said, I was just a student in university. We happened to know the boy, the son of an important member in the Securitate, in the famous, infamous Romanian Secret Service, which was called Securitate. And then he told me the name and the date. They executed Ceausescu on 25th of December. When he said that, it was June 1989, it sounded like crazy. It sounded like, okay, you are totally far out. And he said, no, I'm telling you, this is the plan. I never heard about Ion Iliescu, this minor rank communist who became the president. Never heard about him. Yeah, which means it was like, imagine if to my level it arrived, that information, how well known it was. And the question is, of course, how strong was the totalitarian regime? Because it is depicted as if it was super strong. However, these people can plan such a massive operation just under their nose, which shows it was not that as it is depicted. Yeah. So this is one observation, which is common sense observation. This is something I witnessed. It's not something I heard from a friend who heard a friend and we cannot check. No, this is a guy who is a writer now, a journalist now, and is very known, who was my friend at the time, and we lost contact for many years now, but at the time we were very close together, and he came to me with the good news, and it was June 1989. Now, what is very interesting, during especially 1989 year, it was a bombardment, that's the word, bombardment with absolutely crazy party decisions. So far that very often people started to talk. These, we have a saying in Romania, before you fall, Satan takes your minds. Like, you lose your minds before you fall, before you fail. And then people started to evoke that. They say, my goodness, it's like these people, before they fall, Satan took their minds. Because it's like, how is it even possible? They were making all kinds of arbitrary decisions. It seems like designed to piss off the whole nation. Imagine, for instance, decisions like the following. You're not allowed to have curtains on your windows.
Really?
Yeah, imagine that. So all the ground floor apartments and shops and institutions, they are not allowed to have curtains. And I know that in Denmark, curtains are not something of your culture. So that would go unnoticed, such a decision. But trust me, in Romania, this was like, Romanians like their privacy. We have very nicely decorated, quite thick curtains on the windows, especially when you live on the ground floor and so on. So this
like
was like
stripping in the public almost.
Yeah, exactly. Like it was, and I remember the morning when this decision, because they were coming like directives which were shocking. I remember people, did you hear about this new crazy thing with the curtains? No, what? Yeah, this. Not to mention all kind of administrative decisions which were like, didn't make sense. It was like suddenly somebody up there was trying to piss off the entire nation. And actually that was what they did. They just tried to piss everybody off to make sure that when the spark happens, we're ready.
And there would be a backup from the...
Exactly, because imagine if they try a revolution and nobody goes out in the street, who you shoot? Because they needed things on camera,
Do you see some parallels to what you explain now to today with, for example, all these executive orders you hear from governments about coronavirus and...
Yes, very much. And redefinition of terms. It's something that the communist regime did first thing they came in power. First thing when they came in power in Romania, they won one election, but with a lot of stealing which was never proven. Sounds familiar. And they redefined terms. They defund police, first thing. They redefined terms. Even police was called militia, because militia is a popular form of justice, while police is from the privileged one. This is how it was justified. You can search for the newspapers at the time. Again, it's strikingly similar to what we see and hear today. Yeah, so they defunded police, they renamed police, they started the Cultural Revolution, which was cancel culture, but in older terms. Yeah, Cultural Revolution, and Cultural Revolution created a wave of mediocrity and incompetence driven by opportunism. This is what it created. It swept the country. It was a disaster. It was very sad. It killed any initiative of people, because no matter how you are, there is an idiot somewhere who is frustrated that he couldn't, because he is not very competent. He couldn't rise to acknowledgement and so on, but he would find something in the past of a great professor, great writer. Look, you wrote that thing which is not critical enough against privilege. Which they were talking a lot about privilege at the time. Lots about speaking from a position of privilege. But it's true, it was not the color of the skin. That's the only difference, because we were fortunately homogeneous in color. But the terms were the same, identical even.
It reminds me also of this. That was some years ago. There was this autobiography which came out about the Economical Hitman, where he describes in his confessions how there are certain schemes they're running for, like they ran it for Iraq when they took out Hussein, the Arab Spring, all the situations in South America. It sounds so much like that there is a scheme which is basically used in all countries. And
if you observe the events, yes, it is a scheme. And again, what I'm saying is, and what I have witnessed personally, is the fact that such engineering was not necessary. Why not coming up honestly and saying this is what it was? Why did you need to lie about it? Now, that's the question. Why did you need to put some trained soldiers to pose as terrorists, to terrorize society, kill 1,200 people, something like that? We don't know exactly the number today, but like maybe 2,000 people, let's say. Still, it's 2,000 people. It's not like zero, you know. They were assassinated in the name of the revolution to sanctify the new government, the new regime, the new... Like, why would you need that? Because in theory, on the paper, this will be natural because it's people's will. Question is it people's will? Then why did you need all these things? During the revolution, I was out on the street with friends, and we heard and we witnessed something very peculiar. At some point, they were on the streets, minivans and small cars, automobiles, black, with loudspeakers installed on the roof, and there were announcements given on the street. Now, the problem is the equipment they use was Philips. Now, most of the people didn't notice that, but because I was working with this kind of, I knew all these things. We never had this kind of equipment in Romania. We were having Tesla, we were having other kind of equipment. I'm talking about hundreds of cars on the streets, which means massive import. How did they get that in the country when the country was in lockdown? And how did you install it on the roofs? The helicopter with Ceausescu just lift it off one day before this, what I'm telling you now. I witnessed when the helicopter took off. I was there in the square when the helicopter took off.
So it was all prearranged,
So I started even to ask my friends on the streets there, guys, something is wrong here. This is a prearranged thing. We had the impression that we got out and the revolution is starting, but actually, look, these people were prepared. They have the loudspeakers, they have everything. But the strangest thing was what they were announcing. They were announcing everybody should go to the television because terrorists are going to attack. Now, of course, look in the dictionary, the very notion of terrorist is that they are attacking by surprise. You never have a terrorist attack announced before. You know? So the fact that terrorist attacks are announced on TV, it started to really ring an alarm inside of me, and I clearly started to see this is it. This is something that is staged. Yes, of course, they needed people around the television because it was broadcast. It was the first broadcasted revolution on the planet. It was a big achievement for those circles who planned the whole thing.
And there was this famous what I remember from the television, the storming or this takeover of the national television.
Yes, exactly. And with people shot there, blood, and military paratroopers coming in and out and defending the television. Yeah. Terrorists shooting people in the head from nowhere, and nobody could catch them, you know, even though all the troops, all the soldiers on the streets, and yeah. And then you have incidents like the incident in the Minister of Defense. Minister of Defense, suddenly we heard rumors all over the city, announced even on these machines that were, on these cars that were circulating around, announcing that Minister of Defense will be attacked by a column of elite terrorists, elite troops. And yes, there was a battle there. We could hear from all over the city tanks shooting, and when a tank is shooting, you hear it far distance. And they were like a battle which lasted like half a day. Somewhere, we didn't even know where is this happening, like it was hell. And then images starting to emerge. It was in the Minister of Defense, and in front of the Minister of Defense, it was indeed a column of armored vehicles vehicled, destroyed with close-range fire from the tanks. Close-range fire. And they were so proud, and you can see bodies all over, these dismembered bodies, and so on. And for many days, people were walking around taking pictures of these dismembered bodies and terrorists. First terrorist we saw. And the television was CNN-style pumping all these images in our heads. Finally, this is a big blow to the terrorists and all this. Now, the interesting fact is that the column, which was destroyed, was an elite troop, was an elite company, and they were sent by the military to defend the Minister of Defense. And the troops which were defending the Minister of Defense were told they will come, these guys, but they are terrorists. So let them come close. They ambushed them with tanks like a U shape. They let them come in. They came in without being concerned because they saw the tanks, but it's our tanks. So, of course, they came in, and when they reached there in front, they shoot everyone. I think there were over 100 casualties. Yeah. And many years after, they were still perpetrating that lie. I happen to know the son, again, connections, the son of the colonel who was the commander of those soldiers who were executed there. And he told me the story. You found out. No, I found out from Adina's father, which you know that he was also in the military, and he was then in the Minister of Defense together with many other generals. And he told us the story. They were shocked. And then when I asked him, but how did you shoot? He was your friend. And he said, I didn't know he's there, and we were told something else. By whom? By the command. But wasn't the command revolution? No. The command during revolution came from higher up than the government, higher up than anything. It was taken over. He couldn't know more. Or didn't tell us more. It doesn't matter. Yeah. But then the story was confirmed by the son of the person, which I happened to meet, and then we find out the whole story. Anyway, another incident was in the airport, exactly the same. And you cannot call that friendly fire. I was in the army, and I know what is a friendly fire. That was not a friendly fire. That was assassination. In the airport, exactly the same incident. 3 companies of soldiers sent without ammunition, armed but without ammunition, to defend the airport. They were sent from a nearby garrison, nearby city. And then they are sent to the airport. The people in the airport were elite paratroopers, and they were told some terrorists will come dressed in uniforms, in our military uniforms, but they are terrorists. Execute them. And then they came. They stood there in front of the airport. Everybody unloaded the trucks. Imagine, they unload. They lined up. They were reporting to their commanders. So everybody was happy. They saw our troops there, the paratroopers. We're safe. I mean, they are looking at us. Of course, they are in with the gun towards us because they defend the perimeter. And then they start shooting. And they killed each of them. Undefended. Yeah. You see a monument. If you go to Romania, when you go next time, look for the monument. It's a piece of marble in front of the airport there. And it's the names of all the soldiers which were killed there, executed. For years, the parents of these poor soldiers made trials. They tried to see what's going on. Nobody was ever prosecuted. Nobody ever even gave an explanation of what happened.
People just accepted that story, which was, let's say, the official story?
In those days, they accepted it. They embraced it. They were hurrah on the streets. Yes, another victory at the airport. We liquidated 3 companies of terrorists.
That's
and
crazy.
They find out it's our sons, our friends, our brothers, yeah, and so on. So, again, it's exactly in these terms. And the person who was staging all this comes to Bucharest in front of a column of tanks, and he's driving on this jeep. We don't have jeeps in Romania. We have Aro. It was a kind of a local jeep, but this kind of car, yeah, military car, with a flag and a white jacket. In the conditions, people are shot in the head by snipers from the roofs. And he comes like this. The picture appeared on Parimatch and all the international media. The army entered Bucharest to save the revolution. It's like everybody who have a minimal military training, they know that is staged. Obviously, you don't do such thing. You're dead in 3 seconds.
I can't help thinking about now what happened at the Capitol Hill just couple of months ago, 1.5 months ago, and what happened after that. During the Biden inauguration, there was, according to some sources, at least 65,000 National Guard and military gathered there, but it seems that there was a plan to make something like that happen, and a conflict which just never really happened.
False flag operations, they are the specialty of totalitarian regimes when they come into power. Let's not forget the Reichstag fire, which allowed to consolidate. By the way, they use this term, consolidate or enforce the elections. The elections were not stolen, were consolidated, they say now. This is an obsession that all totalitarian regimes are having to rename, because they, in this way, try to deceive at the conceptual level, which is a very important level, to deceive people. And they have an obsession with renaming. Vocabulary is evolving naturally. You don't need to enforce vocabulary. People who try to enforce vocabulary always belong to these totalitarian regimes. Always. You can spot them when they start to change the vocabulary. No, that word is not good. You cannot say mister. You have to say comrade. You cannot say this gender. You have to say inclusive terms, blah, blah. You cannot say... When you hear that, you're about to meet one of the exponents, one of the agents of the totalitarian regime, which either came into power or is about. This is the symptom of totalitarianism coming into power, redefining terms, redefining social relations, putting other proportions than the natural proportions in all events, and then they create tension by what? Staged events, 1989 stage event, in which I have witnessed clearly on the streets even, and seen firsthand the effects, but also other staged events. In 12th of January 1990, which means few days after the revolution, after Ceausescu is executed, after we eat the American turkeys, so to speak, in Bucharest, 12th of January, a huge mass of people gathers in front of the building of the government because you stole our revolution. That was the slogan. You stole our revolution. People started to figure out. People started to remember. They went out quite fast, I have to say, from the consensus trance. And they remember, wait a second, this guy who landed on top, he's a minor Communist Party exponent. He was there when they did a lot of very bad things to people and so on. How come he's suddenly... And not only that, lots of things they started to do. First thing, yeah, instead of, trying to fix the economy, which they promised, trying to do all the good things that the country was waiting, they started with all kind of, let's say, revenge things and this kind of things to, of course, we are in a modern time, we didn't have public executions, but kind of public executions, exposing people and so on. And then many people felt betrayed. And on 12th of March, they gathered in front of the government. This time, the government was guarded by heavily armed vehicles and army. So suddenly fences are good, army is good. Before that, army was bad, and they should work with people. Now people gathered, and suddenly army is guarding the government. Our building is not capital. That's the only difference.
That's also what is so scary about what you see today, that these totalitarian schemes which are running are so powerful, and people they start to, like you say, they just accept changes in the language. You know, you open the
Yes.
Congress in US saying amen and a woman. It becomes so absurd. The whole
Yeah, well, that is also a combination with lack of culture. That person who did that is low IQ, low education, low EQ. It's a combination of factors. We have to understand that. But anyway, the thing is, in this respect, that we can see the compliance of people. We saw it then, and we see it again now, exactly in the same way.
You have now in Denmark, nearly 1 year after the first lockdown in March 2020, polls showing that 48% of the population demand that you need a vaccine passport to enter restaurants, when the restaurants will open. The people want passports for cultural events, for restaurants and all this, so they don't even have to make laws. They just have to make...
As I said, it is enough to insert one very well-placed lie in the public consciousness, and the rest, the public will do it. Once you obtain yes to a certain strategic aspect, that's it. Now the public will draw the conclusion. If we want the society to go back to a certain kind of normality, of course I want a passport, COVID pass, or how they call it. Of course I need that, because I want my life back. You are an idiot. You don't want to vaccinate. You don't want to, but I want my life back. So I want to protect myself from your problems. And yeah. But of course, that's the way they engineer it. You create a strategic mutation there, and the rest is done naturally. Unfortunately, people focus at the surface. Even all these conspiracy theories, they focus at the surface. They don't see that in reality, what they focus upon is a natural phenomenon most often. And that's why the others, they feel bad about it, and they say, no, this can't be. These people are honest. Yes, they are honest. The people in Romania in 1989 on the street, they were honest. I mean, it was the immense majority of people there on the street, they were honestly trying to get something better. But there were some false assumptions there. Like, for instance, the fact that we all believed that the whole uprising is done spontaneous. It was not. It was engineered. But once you agree to go out on the street, that's it. Let us do. Shooting starts. You start to react. You put pressure on people. They will react exactly as you wanted. They will create mass hysteria. They will attack other people, innocent people. Lots of innocent people were attacked, beaten, and killed by other people who you cannot blame them for so much, because actually they were just afraid. They just freaked out.
I also know that you studied a lot of these mechanisms of the mind, and you also are teaching meditation, and actually created maybe one of the most extensive meditation courses on the planet at the moment. In this study, I mean, there must have been a background in our culture, like when did to run such schemes and get people, the majority of people on board, you have to know the human psyche very much. I mean, very well. So how did this play out? I mean, how did it happen that these people got to know the human psyche so well? much better than people know themselves.
Well, this was an obsession for the people who want power. It's an obsession for millennia. It's a drive and an aspiration, know thyself. And then it becomes, when you project it towards the outside, know the others, in order to control and to obtain power. So on the superior level is the aspiration to know thyself, thus knowing the secrets of the universe. Beautiful endeavor, beautiful aspiration. But when this one falls, it falls out. And then you become obsessed to understanding how human consciousness works, because you want to push forward your agenda, very often even lying to yourself. I want to do it for you. I want to help you because you are unable. It's a theory that is centuries old, that you are unable to rule yourself. People are too lame, people are too stupid, people are too unconscious to rule themselves. This is something you find in all the Masonic tradition. That's how they justify their occult existence. Because they say people cannot rule themselves. There has to be always an elite group, a small group of people who know better. But we can't disclose the full plan because the masses, the blind masses, will not accept it, even though it's good for them. But of course, it's a very, very tempting. It's a very, very tempting tendency. This one, and some of the most dangerous people on the planet are the professional helpers. People who believe that they try to help you, they do the biggest atrocities in the name of we try to help you. We try to make your life better, but you need to allow us to do it. And because you are unconscious, you don't know your own benefits, we need to trick you into it or to tie your hands or.
That's how you see today some of these figures like Bill Gates, Dr. Fauci, others who seem to run, charity foundations and helping humanity to get healthy and vaccinated and unified and so on. So that's how it combined, that they really believe they want the better for people, or how do you think they are?
Yeah, I am personally 100% convinced that most of these lunatics, I have to say it, if we enlarge the perspective, I know it's a tough term, but to its very correct definition, not redefined terms, these lunatics, they really believe they help. With the data they have, with the inner data, with the lack of intuition, with the disconnection from their own soul, with the confusion regarding moral values and spiritual values, or non-existent values for most of them, factoring in all these things, these people believe that they do something good. Not all of them. I'm sure there are some crooks which are just faking it. There are some crooks which are faking it. But there are some people who truly, and they are the most dangerous, they truly believe they can help. And here is a mental experiment. Imagine the following thing. You replace any of these people with a randomly picked person from the street. You know what will be surprising? There will be no difference. Because what they do is in the inferior human nature. I found it in myself. I found it in students I'm guiding through the courses that we're teaching. I found it in ancient treatises and in ancient books described. That's the inferior level of consciousness of everyone on the planet. So the terrible secret of the occult societies is this. They have no secret. That's their terrible secret. They are no different. They are just some poor human beings driven by all kinds of subconscious layers of interest they are not even aware very often of. We speak about hidden agenda. Yes, there is a hidden agenda, but very often it's so well hidden, even the perpetrators don't know about it. It's hidden in their subconscious. It's transparent from an observer. Yeah, you know the classic story when a friend comes to you and says, let's go in that place. I think we can find something interesting to read. And you say, come on, you want to meet the librarian, isn't it? No, I'm just suddenly wanted to read. Yeah, since when are you reading? It's just because the librarian is very pretty. That's why you want to go there. You see that, but he or she doesn't see that, isn't it? Well, imagine these are the quality of these people also on top. Just that they are given access to buttons and all kind of strings they can pull, strings of power. That's all. But if you will replace all these names that you said there, if you replace them with other people that you pick randomly from the street, you'll be surprised. There's no difference. In few days, even a homeless person will be washed from the poverty and so on, but will start to be greedy, will start to even saying, I think I know what we have to do. Yes, we should do that. Wait a second, maybe there is an alternative. Maybe, no, there is no. I saw the statistics, but we can't go front door because, I know how people will react. I've been there on the street. They are stupid. They are idiots. So we just go behind their backs and we trick them in because it's for their good. There will be some people dying on the process, yes, but it's better than millions dying. But how do you know that is an assumption? And so on. So
that also brings to another question, because it's no secret today that the current system, some people call it the elite or the cabal or whatever, they are run through some quite public institutions like Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg Group, even though the meetings are secret. Everybody knows about it by now. We have the UN, which many say is deeply involved into these schemes. But my question is, let's say...
Naturally involved.
Naturally involved. Now there's an initiative by our rather large group started from the US.
You have to add World Health Organization to that
absolutely
panel, because now
WHO, of course, and the International Monetary Federation and all these. But we have today a quite large group of, let's say, the resistance, maybe a bit like the ones you described in 89 in Romania, who said, hey, wait a second, there was a fake election, or there was a fraud with the election. There is something going on. There is pedophile circles amongst the ones in charge, and we want to get rid of all that. So we want an alternative. The marker movement, the so-called QAnon movement, which is not really a movement, but more like I think an idea. But what will happen if they take over? I mean, will it be any better?
Yeah, this is the problem, you see, because unless there is a process of awakening from inside, there will not be an alternative. People are the one who elected and put in power the crooks that exist today in power. People were the one accepting it, and more than accepting, following the lies, jumping in to the lies just because they want social validation, but they are not aware of that desperate, obsessive need of validation from the society. People need to make sense, and therefore they fill in the blanks with all kind of anything that is served to them. Look, this fit. Thank you, it fits. Like you search for a piece of a puzzle and suddenly somebody gives you, and you don't even check. Hey, but this is not even from this puzzle. You just put it there. You just want to finish it. So it gives you the comfort of making sense in a life that doesn't make sense, not because of what happens outside, but because of what is inside of you and your perspective. And then, of course, on this background, what you will do, it will be like French Revolution. You kill a lot of people, and the result is Napoleon. The result will be the next wave, and the next wave, and the next wave. Why? Because it's the quality that we have today that need to be raised. In my opinion, this is the solution, and this is the alternative. Alternative to what? Alternative to the hamster wheel of history, where we repeat and repeat and repeat until eventually we get so tired that we stop a little bit and we stop. Listen, can we find a way out? Yeah, the way out is the way in. The way out is that you find a way to bring yourself into the picture, to put yourself into the middle of that historic picture. And then, when you put yourself there, you see a totally different morality. You see a totally different definition of your life and happiness and conditionings. And practically everything is shifting for the better. And then the power, the way it's aggregated today, is falling apart like a castle made of sand. The castle made of sand is kept together by the superficial tension of the water molecules and in touch with the sand particles. But when that is not strong enough, the whole shape is disintegrating. That is what happens with us. And we are the superficial tension, our needs, our desperate needs, the inside out needs, they are the aggregation of this illusion that we have today, this farce that we have today in the human society.
So maybe what you start to describe now is, let's say, if the other part is the fake revolution, maybe this is what really had to do.
Could be a real revolution. You see, people intuitively spoke about this today. They call it the Great Awakening. I totally agree with that. I subscribe entirely to this idea of we need a Great Awakening, not a Great Reset. This is idiotic. Great Reset is to cover the tracks of the mistakes you did in the past. Let's whitewash everything. Let's forget what we did. We need a Great Reset. Wait a second. Let's analyze what happened. And who did this?
Exactly. The same who wants the Great Reset was the one who...
Exactly. Those who want the Great Reset are the perpetrators of the problems or the institutional problems that we have today, for which they call for a Great Reset. Which, of course, is stupid, but see, people are buying into it. That's why, instead of such ideas, which are the result of our exteriorization, putting our power outside for others to take it, putting our happiness outside for others to take it and to condition our happiness on it, which is false. You're the source of everything. Yeah. And in this way, if we turn to ourselves, tend to ourselves, we'll see different, we'll feel different, and everything around us will start to fall like the castle made of sand. And from that, yes, we can shape a true society, which is starting from inside out. It grows organically. It's not shaped with a shape imposed from outside.
We hear many exponents of also some of these ideas, more like public exponents who are saying, yeah, the Great Awakening, let's be more spiritual. But isn't it also a danger that that's just another fake revolution?
In many cases, yes, because how do you recognize it is by the methods. Great Awakening is a concept. How do you do it? You use some very effective methods that can operate transformations in such an effective way that is the equivalent of an awakening. But you have to see it. You have to see the results. Most of the people who talk about Great Awakening, they themselves have a practice. Their individual practice is almost zero, very little. And most of the time, even in these environments of people wanting great awakening, when somebody comes and show them some powerful methods, they get scared. Yeah, because for them, ignorance is bliss. And great awakening is taking away the bliss. Do you really want that? Do you really subscribe to that movement? Or you just want another kind of dream? Another alternative dream?
I mean, practicing meditation, I remember in the beginning, I imagined, okay, in a couple of weeks, I will probably be enlightened, because, you know, how difficult can it be? You just have to focus and relax and whatever. And it might be that experience is also what people will have today, that they realize that great awakening is not just around the corner, but it might be 20 years of reconsideration and looking inside, self-inquiry, meditation and stuff.
And sometimes a lot of inner challenges that feel bad, because when you are facing an inner challenge, you have nobody to blame. It's one of the things that is the most difficult today for people to understand. It's like, and they say, yeah, I would like to practice. Yes, but be aware that you will face inner challenges, and one of their very annoying characteristics is that you can't blame anyone. And today we are addicted to find blame, to find someone to blame. That's the reason why the capacity to take feedback today is almost zero. Hence, we invented political correctness as a defense against taking responsibility. We try to rename things in order to what? To hide from your responsibility, to hide from who you are. So, yes. But anyway, let's maybe we keep going with this. Time is passing now, and maybe it's calling for a third meeting.
Absolutely. I have another page here of questions.
Oh, that's good. That's good. And let's do it again, because I find this topic very important now, especially due to the fact that more and more people are shocked. And while they are shocked, it will be very good to at least provide with a perspective that they can start to understand quickly, and yeah, why not? Maybe start an awakening journey. So that's it for today, and thank you, Sahaj, for this joining forces.
You're welcome.
In this process. And I invite you all to the next episode, which we will have on this topic regarding a view behind the Iron Curtain and fake revolutions. Stay tuned until next time. Post your comments and suggestions below. And also, please let me know what topics would you like to hear in future podcasts, because I'm also selecting from the suggestions and requests, and we will for sure address the most interesting suggestions, the most relevant of the time now in future podcasts. Thank you again, Sahaj, and see you in the next episode of this journey.
Thank you for listening to the Continuous Transformation Podcast. For more episodes, articles, and events, visit advaitananda.com.